welcome everyone to this new podcast series, which have been started by Aurangabad WICASA, which is very unique and very interesting because it talks about what are the features or what are the aspects which a CA student should consider after he has become a CA. What are the options which are available after he becomes a CA? And today in this episode, we are going to talk about international taxation and what are the future in the international transaction. And today we have our special guest, CA Hardik Mehta sir, who has 12 years of experience in international transactions and the FEMA Act. We welcome you, sir.
Good evening, Abhinav. Thanks for this, lovely invite to this podcast series.
Okay. So before wasting any more time, let's straight away get into the questions which we have prepared for you and our students, which we are most likely to listen. So
Right.
before starting this, getting into more of a technical detail, the audience which would be listening to this podcast will be the student side, and I think the students are pretty less aware of what an international transaction means or what a foreign transaction means unless he becomes a CA. So can you just give a brief intro about what is exactly an international transaction and what is exactly a foreign exchange transaction?
Yeah. So I would, beg to differ. Nowadays, students are very smart, right? So the quality of students have been improving over the years, and they are pretty much aware of what is happening around them, right? But yeah, just as a brief, so international transaction is basically a transaction which is affecting two countries in a very layman terms, right? Whether it is in nature of purchase, sales, right, or it is transfer or buying or selling of property, shares, anything. Now, what do you mean by international tax? Technically, international tax, there is no such terminology. It is international tax law. So when there are two countries, they agree into a agreement called double tax avoidance agreement, which is predominantly entered into to make sure there is no evasion of taxes. At the same time, there is no income which is doubly taxed. And this is which this agreement comes into play when there is a transaction between two individuals which affects one or more countries, more than one country, right? So let me, me and Abhinav, right? We both are presuming Indian residents, right? So if suppose I transfer property in London to Abhinav, right? There would be this would be a transaction, international transaction, and international tax law would be applicable because the property is situated in London. At the same time, suppose you are a non-resident, right? And you are buying something from me, right? You are a resident of another country, and I am a resident of India. Then again, international tax law will come into anything which affects two countries, right, either through a transaction or with two entities or two individuals staying into different countries, enter into transaction. That's why international tax law will kick in. Now, what do you mean by FEMA? Or what do you mean by foreign entry transaction, foreign exchange law? Now, India is one of the very unique countries which have foreign exchange law. Not all the countries in the world has foreign exchange law. We are not still capital account convertible. I'm not going to go into jargons much, but yeah, this was something which is important to understand. And there are restrictions on how much of money we can transfer in and outside India. Hence, every transaction is being looked upon from a foreign exchange perspective, and the law which governs that is named as FEMA. So this is a very short brief on what do you mean by international transaction, what do you mean by international tax law, and what do you mean by FEMA? That is foreign exchange law.
Okay, very correctly mentioned. So just to let know, what are the limits or what are the provisions on which assessees would an international transaction would be charged or a foreign exchange transaction would be charged?
So there is nothing like okay. So chargeability comes from taxation, right? There is nothing like chargeability in foreign exchange, but yes. So let me give a precursor to this. Most of students in the CA firms, they when doing the articleship, they must have always come across this 50 CA 50 CD. And why 50 CA CD? Because under Section 195 of the Act, when you are making a remittance outside India, you need to deduct appropriate taxes or you need to give a certificate that tax is not to be chargeability of that transaction. So I just tried to explain it in a more, understanding of what chargeability of tax or international transaction being, because this is what even I have experienced in my career. Everyone starts with this, remittance in and out of India, right? Whereas foreign exchange, there is no chargeability. It's more of whether it is permissible or is prohibited, and if it is permissible, to what level it is permissible. So there are two type of transactions: current account transaction and capital account transaction. So foreign exchange law works differently than how income tax. International tax law is basically have basic tenets from the income tax law. It is nothing different, right? International tax is not like a separate. You might have a separate subject in CA syllabus, right? But ultimately, everything comes out of income tax law, where foreign exchange transactions and governance of it comes out of FEMA. That is FEMA law.
Okay. Okay. So just to mention, the most important journey which a CA or a CA student which takes is, I think, during the article would agree with me, because it is a base for creating your future. What you learn in articulture is what, and exact. If you want to do any specialization, you go into that firm. You learn how you could start as a practice or as a you can take up a job as a career. So can you brief our students about where did matters did you study there? Did you study only international tax or FEMA, or you take up the international tax after you become CA?
Okay, so my articleship, was spread over two forms, right? My 3 years of articleship was divided between two forms. One was a small mid-sized firm, NJ Panchalan company in nearby my house, which was a traditional firm where I actually learned everything, right from audit. In fact, I also learned transfer pricing there, taxation, TDS returns, every nuance of. At that point of time, it was VAT returns. There was no GST at that point of time. So I even learned that, right? And then I, my in the last year of my articleship, I was with TP Oswal and Associates, which is very well recognized international tax firm, right? International tax and transfer pricing firm. So these were the two firms where I spent my 3 years of articleship. Touch wood, or I would say luckily, I was fortunate enough to first learn all the practice areas with a which a charter accountant can come across at that point of time, right? In 12 years, the profession has changed a lot. Even the practice areas have changed a lot. At that point of time, I never heard of someone doing insolvency, practice, because it was never there, right? But yeah, the basic traditional practice is what I always thought was important to make your foundation very strong. And that at TP Oswal, I got a flair. You can say I got a flair of what international taxation is, what transfer pricing is, what FEMA is. I think that is where I can say, that is the start of my journey in this field.
Okay, okay. So I think there is a very important point which you mentioned, which our audience can note it down, where you said the basics of practice. When you go into a practice, the basics are very, very important. Right now, many of us, I have also heard many CAs saying that traditional practice makes no sense now. सब तो अभी चला जाएगा, GST भी चला जाएगा, income tax is also getting automated, and हो सकता है कि अब नया एरिया ढूंढना पड़ेगा, प्रैक्टिस में भी कुछ नहीं रखा है. But I think I also to some extent believe that is not true. जो बेसिक रहेगा वो तो रहने ही वाला है, and which you also mentioned, and I think our students can take a note that basics should be clear, specialization which you need. So student comes up with a query. What advice would you give if he wants to take up international transactions? So should he go for a specialized area in his articleship, or he should learn a basics and then go for a specialization after he becomes a CA?
So, if I correctly rephrase you, so you're asking me what a student should do if he wants to learn international tax or transfer pricing, right? And how he should shape up his articleship for that.
Exactly.
Straight away, it can be subjective, right? But my straight answer would be go with a mid-size firm, right? Mid to big firm. I would say mid-size. Why? Because there is no departmentalization in such firms, right? I would like that person to take advantage of each and every field in which that firm is engaged into, including international tax and FEMA and transfer pricing. And I can say this with utmost confidence that a person who knows the base of who knows the basics of every field, right? Whether it is audit, taxation, or even accounts. Let me be very frank. I've come across students, right, who might be good in some subject, but they can't even tell you a balance sheet, right? Or they can't even get a proper nuances of how to read a balance sheet, how to understand the notes and everything. And trust me, even if you are transfer pricing practitioner, right, these are the basics which you should know. Okay, that's why I say you should go with a mid-sized firm, which can offer you all kind of areas exposure, right? And and one of those areas should be international tax transfer pricing, as that is one of the emerging areas in the last 2 decades. At least it has been in play for years, but at least from last 2 decades, transfer pricing has kicked in big time, and and even FEMA was introduced in year 2000, where we actually came from regulation to facilitation. So I think that my straight answer would be go to a mid-sized firm where you can experience each and every facet of CA practice.
Okay. Okay. So on a very lighter note, I would like to ask you, there is no articleship if you haven't done any mischief during your articleship period. From my personal experience, I did my articleship with my family office only, and I couldn't do mischief because it was my family firm. I would request Vikasa not to share this video with them. So, can you brief us about what mischief, if you could recall some of them which you did in your articleship period?
To be very frank, sorry, but even I was of that person, right, who didn't have that list of mischief which I did. Right? But I can share some experiences which was very unique to articleship. It was never before, and it never happened afterwards, also, right? And hence, that is kind of a period which you will always cherish for your life, right? One was when you used to go on, audits to companies, right? Whether it is, in factories, or you will go to some offices. The journey to that and coming back was always a fun phase, right? Whether you were with your friends or you were alone in crowded buses, trains, right? All those memories will always be with you. Secondly, the breakfast, the snacks time or the lunch time, those are the, and that never, you don't have to experience, and not even wish, you don't have to experience that always in office. I have made good connects mostly at client places rather than in office, because in my first firm, which was a small mid-sized firm, there were not many students with me at that point of time, but there were many clients where I used to visit for audits, and I used to make good relations and friendships with those accountants, and that's where you start your career. That's where you start the recall value of what clients thinks of you and makes an impression. At the same time, we had a good time at TP Oswal, going down in the, it was situated in Bombay, Fort area. So there is good amount of food, junk food, or places where you can have your, you can experience those kind of different cuisines, street food and everything. You can enjoy that. So yeah, no mischief as such, right? But I enjoyed every bit of traveling, every bit of company which I had in office and outside. So I think that is something. And some friendships, let me tell you, some friendships made in articleship will be for life. And I have some very, very strong friendships which I made at both the firms, and it's been with me till now, and it will be forever.
Okay, okay. That's, yeah, very good to hear. So, how, who inspired you to take up this field, and how would you describe your journey for all these 12 years that you have come to this place?
Okay, so let me tell you, in last 12 years, right? So 3 years before that articleship, so 15 years, right? So in 15 years, in first 3 years, I actually, as I told you, I got a flair. I did, transfer pricing in first 2 years of my articleship, but I never knew anything about FEMA or international tax. I learned international tax in third year of my articleship. Then I became part, so then you become a ICI member, and I also became part of voluntary organizations like BCS and CTC. Luckily, I was exposed to many such seminars and conferences which were organized by our institute, that is WRC, and even these voluntary bodies, where I got to know the subject much more deeper. And that's where I said, yeah, this is where my interest lies. To be very frank, I can remember one of the seminar which had happened related to international tax happened at Infosys campus, and at that point of time, the deliberations which were there on international tax and FEMA was so it felt like glamour of CA profession, to be very frank, right? When you say glamour, right? What is the glamour in CA profession? Actually, international tax law felt like me. It was like glamour of CA profession. Everything was so you tried your level best to understand, and it was dealing with countries. So you are always found of something outside India, right? You always try to want to travel outside India, and when you learn the tax laws of other countries, when you learn the double tax avoidance agreement, you feel that you are learning something more than what your syllabus is. Luckily now syllabus have international tax. At that point of time,
Correct.
there was no international tax as a subject. So there was this glamour, you can say, which attracted. But I can say that this voluntary bodies and conferences of ICAI actually contributed, and the stint which I had at TP was something which made my decision to pursue my career in this field.
Okay. So, if any student who has just cleared his CA exam,
Right.
if he comes to you and asks you exactly how he should begin his career as an international tax expert or a foreign transaction expert, so what would be your advice to that person?
So as the first question which you had asked, where that person should start the articleship, right? And that I answered as a mid-sized firm. Now coming to how you build a career or how you should start learning this, there are two ways to do it. One, you first understand the theory part in your syllabus. Side by side, you take practical exposure which your firm gives you the opportunity. There is another way which I would prefer. Apart from the theory, you take part in the student study circle, which is organized by various organizations, even as you Vikasa, right? Vikasa is a students
Correct.
forum, right? And you might be having many seminars for students and everything. And that is where you need to take part, you need to lead. So I remember in my CA, whether it is foundation, inter, final, we always used to study in groups. We always used to make our friends understand some concepts if they doesn't understand. If I never used to understand something, my friend used to make me we used to always deliberate. There was no silos kind of studying, right? There were always groups. We used to study in library and every stuff. Today is an era where you can also be, discuss various nuances in these groups, right? So that you also deliberate much more than what the act or what the study material gives you.
Correct.
Okay, so let's take an example. Today, someone is like, "Sir, I want to or I want to start something studying on international tax. I want to practice. Or I want to widen my horizon or what it is." I will say, "Okay, make a presentation on section 195." That is where you start, right? Make a lead a discussion in some study circle relating to some foreign exchange law subject. I think that's how you would go into detail, and devil always lies into detail. I though I said about all the glamour and all the attraction of the field, but the field is so vast. It actually requires 4 Ds. Why I say 4 Ds? One is determination, dedication, devotion, and the last one, which is expected out of every CA profession, is discipline. Apart from these 4 Ds, you will never able to go deep in any subject and succeed in that part. So before you start, I think these are the 4 attributes which you need to have, and always try to lead on any subject, try to deliberate on any subject at any forum, whether it is a group of 3 or a group of 30.
Okay. So, as you very rightly mentioned, I would just like to add one more point of what you said. You said that you would say any person to prepare a presentation on any of the section. So my principal also used to say the same thing in our office. Also, we used to have weekly presentation, and that at that time it felt a very big burden on us. But right now we understand why it is very important, because once you are trying to explain it to someone else, you need to read that twice or thrice or
Perfect.
four times, because you don't know what doubt can come up in someone else's mind. So that is very, I think, important thing which every student should understand, because if you want to learn something, you need to teach it. That's
Perfect.
how you can get expertise in that subject.
Right.
Okay, so my next question would be: in every field, according to me, there might be three stages of how we can go ahead. The
Right.
first is the learning stage. The second is an intermediate stage, and the third stage can be a master stage, where
Right.
you're expert in that subject
Right.
and you have everything that it needs to scale up your career.
Right.
So, how much time do you think would take for someone to go to that level, or to go to that master stage, where he is an expert in an international tax or foreign exchange transaction?
I have a different point of view. In no field you can say that you are a expert or you mastered that field. Today we are living in a very dynamic world, and let me tell you, most of the well-established and accomplished professionals would always say, you are a learner, you are a student for life, and especially for international tax, you will always be. What I studied international tax and what today the international tax is, whether it is transfer pricing or various OECD initiatives, right? It has changed dramatically. However, uh, if I put it this, from a amateur to a pro, right, and then someone who can go into advanced studies on the subject, uh, the path is very simple, though very boring. Is you need to develop an interest and passion for the subject. The moment you do that, irrespective of the mode of how you exercise it is different. Now, how would you be able to uh, master a subject, or I would say establish a expertise on the basics and foundation? Is various There are various modes of doing that. One is you study the theory, another is you practice it day in day out, third is you teach it, okay, and fourth it you always try the different avenues of becoming an academician on that subject. Today, international tax law is not only for practice. I have seen many professionals, many of my contacts who have actually become have developed an academic interest in this subject and have done PhD in this subject. And for that, you need a passion for that subject, and without that you won't be able to do that. There is no time frame by which you can achieve this. I have seen professionals at a very young age, even less than 25, have been so good in the subject that they have been speaking at various forums, whether it is domestic or international. And at the same time, no one can say that they have known everything. Let me tell you, one of the very senior professionals, my principal at CP always used to say, that he has not met one single person who can explain the concept of permanent establishment, which is one of the key areas to understand in the international taxation. And let me tell you, that term is still evolving with digital businesses all around the world. No one can say that I know the definition of permanent establishment in detail. So I hope I tried to answer what you were asking, right? But I thought to take it at a level which I understood that there is nothing like mastery of the subject. There is always of how deep you can go into the subject.
Correct, correct, absolutely right. So, are there any more academical courses which a person or a student who has just cleared his exam should do to get to a pro level from an amateur level? Are there any more courses which he should do?
Uh, so let me tell you, around a year back or a couple of years back, when I think the international tax subject was introduced, I had an occasion to go through the subject in detail, and I also have an occasion to go through the material of post qualification diploma in international taxation, right? Which has been done by the C Institute provided. Both the material and the coverage is very exhaustive and vast. So if you have taken international, so if you want to do that as a career, you would definitely take that as a subject in your final year. That's for sure. Okay, there's nothing which will stop you to take that subject, because then that your base will become stronger. The moment you do that, you at least have a strong foundation. And then if you want to do some courses, one is the CS post diploma course in international taxation. There are many other courses outside that. Whether you do a LLM in international tax law, you do advanced diploma in international tax law by UK Institute, or you do PhD in international tax, right? There are many others I can just name on and on. But what I believe is, uh, courses will be one thing. You are after you become a CA, you don't appear in such courses just for the sake of degree or getting that pass, right? You are here to get the extensive knowledge on that subject. For that, there has to be a day in, day out updation, day in, day out interest in that subject, and tracking of what the developments are happening in that subject. And that is, I think, which will be helpful in the longer run rather than any course. Of course, all these courses are very helpful for sure. You can always do that at any point of time. And as I told you, that there are various modes of getting yourself indulged in one subject. Whether you become an academician, or you become a professor, or you become a professional dealing in it practically. But it is your interest which will ultimately drive your expertise and nothing else. So yeah, courses are good, but I think if you take first step is, since we are doing this for students, first step is to take this subject as a elective subject in your CA final. That is where you
Correct.
start your journey.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So, what would be your suggestion if someone comes up whether he should take international tax as a practice, or whether he should take a job first? Like, if someone comes to you as a suggestion, what would be your advice? Would it be better if he starts his own practice, or whether he should do a job?
I would never ever advise in current scenario to anyone to start practice directly after he becomes a CA. There are various reasons for that thought process. One is, the more you meet people, the more places you work, the more broader your horizon becomes. The subject international tax itself is a vast subject. If you ask me, one thing which I didn't do, which I would advise someone to do is, if you really want to go deep into it, just doing 15 CSEB and Section 195 advisor, you are not actually, you are just touching the tip of international tax. That is not international tax law, right? It is just one section, one part, right? You can't say that I know international tax law just by doing that. Okay, that is I would say, a gate to that subject. But if you really want to do that, what you should do is, you should have whether you can say, work in a firm which is very much specialized into this. Big firms, go into in big industries or big companies where there are specific division which deals with international tax or corporate tax, where you are given such kind of a role, or
Correct.
take some opportunity outside India, uh, where also you get such kind of tools. And I have seen many people even doing that. So I have seen people working in big firms in India in such department, and then they are taking a kind of a secondment, and go work in Australia, Canada, Singapore. Yeah, I'm not saying you migrate, right? But at least that brief international skills, where you study the income tax law, would be very much helpful.
Okay. Okay. So, next question would be on a very lighter note. Last year, there was one web series which came out, which was named Scam 1992, which basically mentioned the story of Harshad Mehta. And after that, many students have been interested in listening to what scams have happened, and they have a lot of interest in that. So, can you describe one of your experiences? Have you experienced any of a scam or a hawala transaction which have taken place, or you have thought of during your these 12 years, if you have got any transaction like these?
So, touchwood, I have never been part of, I have never witnessed such transactions at any of my clients' places, or I've handled any of these things. But yes, since I am involved in foreign exchange law practice, and that's where, ED, PMLA, Hawala, all those transactions, and even Black Money Act, which came in 2015, right? Uh, all this when I used when I practiced in this field, I came to know that there are many transactions which go undetected, whether it is from income tax purposes or whether it is for foreign exchange law purposes. Uh, so this is, I think, what I have come across. I would not go to an extent saying that it's a scam, but yeah, there is a evasion of taxes, or there is a non-compliance of the law of the land, which is being done by many assessees, mostly unintentionally, right? Uh, which I have come across, and then you have to pay price for it, either paying penalties or doing compounding under the furniture.
Okay. Okay. So my next question would be, what do you think? What can be a contribution of a chartered accountant in framing that law structure and providing some ethical standards by which everyone is following the law very properly and structuring that law in a proper manner?
From what perspective? I didn't get that. So you want me to explain of how a charter
Okay,
accountant?
I'll just repeat the question once again.
Okay.
So I was just asking, what is your view on how a CA can contribute in framing an international policy and a law structure?
Okay. So let me tell you today. Okay, and since the previous question was on scams, and now this question in line with it. So we as a profession, as said by our honorable Prime Minister, we are partner in nation building, right? When you are partner in the nation building, as a profession, you are not expected to do anything unethical, which is of course wrong. Now let's take it to another level. Uh, whether when I advise some assessee or some client on any transaction to do in a particular way, which might save taxes, whether you say that I am doing tax planning or I am doing a disservice to my nation by indulging into advising in tax evasion. I think this is where a thin line of difference which happens in today's world. Touch wood, we have good laws which can be enforced with the latest of general anti-avoidance rule in income tax, where any such kind of practice which will be penalized heavily. However, today in the changing order of the world, no one is here to save taxes at the cost of being into litigation with the any state or any country, right? All every corporate or every assessee in the world would like to pay right amount of taxes, or would like to do right compliance of the law of the land. Okay, and I think we play an instrumental role in that. We as a CA should make sure that our practice is basically from the advisory on the aspects which the client is not aware of, or the team of client is not aware of, rather than making them do something which is outrightly disbenefit to the society and country at large. Whether that would be planning some structure which is very apparent of tax evasion and in the garb of tax plan. I think this is what I would like to answer your question.
Okay. So my next question would be, are there any myths about your field which would you like to burst with respect to international tax for a foreign exchange transaction?
There is no myths, but there is one myth which students have, which of course I would like to clear. And I've seen that articles under me who were uh, obtaining training, is that international tax law is a cream area, right? It's a luxury area, and everything else is very ordinary, nothing like it. Every practice area has its own benefits, has its own attributes. There is nothing, I would say that audit is far more important for a person to understand what the accounts is, what the financial statements is, and what and the analytical skills are far more used in audit. International tax law goes more on the law side. That's why we have two different subjects, right? Audit and law, predominantly. So where you are fond of learning law, you want to become a student of law, you would like to have more time spent in this kind of practice. So the myth that international tax is more of a the luxury or cream, nothing like it. Of course, there is one benefit of this area is you meet many people around the world. You do advising on cross-border transactions, so you would be aware of many tax laws and nuances which is not only limited to India. Today, even audit for that perspective is on the IFRS lines, which is across adopted across the world, right? So we are not now India centric. We are becoming we are very related with global economy or global norm, right? So that perspective, these are some of the myths which I always come across students per se. Secondly, hard work remains the same, whether it is uh, indirect taxes, audit, or international tax or income tax. So that there is nothing like easy or something like that. At the same time, nothing is tough. I have also seen some students, sir, international tax समझ में नहीं आता, it's not my cup of tea. Okay, it's very very difficult to understand. Nothing is difficult if you take good interest, and I think that is where you should focus on. Focus is key. Let me tell you, focus is key. Without focus, no subject will be good for you, or no subject will interest you.
Absolutely correct. So, what would be your advice to young student and young members?
Uh, if they want to pursue a career in this field, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So my first advice is be I would say, as I said, 4 Gs, right? Which is inevitable for any area of practice, right? Be determined of what you want to do. And to be very frank, I was just sharing. I Over the years, the students have become brighter, but they are also distracted. There are a lot many distractions in life. Let me. Sorry to say this, but today, patience is something which people doesn't have. They want to, by saying stock become overnight wealthy. They want to become overnight experts. They want to make overnight name in any field which they are engaged into. It doesn't happen that way. Okay, it takes years of hard work. With recent listing of Zomato, right? Everyone happened that अरे in one day see कहाँ से कहाँ पहुंच गया. But no one sees the 10 years of hard work which went into it to become a successful unicorn being listed. Likewise, a successful practitioner in income tax law will take some time, if not decades, right? But at least some years for you to toil hard to make your hard work count. And hard work also doesn't have any substitute. Make sure you are well aware of what the developments are. Do some of the courses which interest you. There is no compulsion on that. Even a basic CA degree can give you a lot of knowledge, and that's why CA is one of the toughest course in the world, because it tests you on every parameter, whether and then that applies to every field. Just be confident, just be disciplined about what you do, and make sure you are focused on every aspect which you practice on. I have seen people doing 1 year GST, 1 year international tax, even after qualifying, right? And 1 year audit. बाद में then they go into investment banking, doing CFA. So I always, rather than admiring them, I always feel if they would have taken this decision in their first year of career, they would have saved 3 years, right? Uh,
right. Correct.
if you ultimately wanted to go on investment banking side and pursue a career on a different field, why would you, understand GST or something like that? Okay. Uh, so be focused right away. You have so much of even institute does that career counseling. Which career, which option, and this podcast series itself is one of the reasons of doing that, to make you understand that what a field is. Make sure you take this decision by the time you become a CA, or as early as possible, and make sure you always practice in area where your passion lies rather than where the people are going. Don't go into peer pressure. If four of my friends does international tax, I have to do international tax. That doesn't happen. Otherwise, you will make a PT out of you in that area.
That is something which is very true because even students right now, when they are choosing their elective subject, they go on the basis of कौन सा paper easy आया था last time. You know, this is something which many students I think would need to change their mindset, because what you need to do, your passion. If you have studied properly, you would be able to crack any question which the institute gives, rather than going that कौन सा easy आया था, कौन सा hard आया था.
Right.
So, thank you so much, Hardik sir, for joining with us. And I think we have learned a lot from you. And with the students that we would be, and the young members who would be seeing this video, I really hope that someone who has inspired in taking international tax do sends his resume to you by giving us our reference that he wants to pursue a career in international tax. So I thank you so much, Hardik sir, for joining us. And there would be also much more episodes which would be coming out on the Vikasa YouTube channel on other different areas with other different guest faculties also. So stay tuned. And thank you so much once again, Hardik sir,
Thanks,
for joining.
thanks once again, and all the best to all the students who are watching this video for your careers. And I know you will always be bright stars, in the world. Sky is limit for you. Thanks again, Vinod. Thanks, Pikasa, for this opportunity of sharing my thoughts on the subject. Thank you. Thank you.
Hold up.